My brothers and sisters, we hear today, St. Matthew tells us that at the sight of the crowds, Jesus' heart was moved with pity for them because they were troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. And, you know, it struck me how St. Matthew focuses on the heart of Jesus. His heart was moved with compassion at the sight of the people. And that gives us an insight into Jesus himself. And when he sent the disciples out to proclaim the gospel, it was the direct result of the compassion he felt in his heart for the people. And you know, June is the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And on Thursday, the bishops did their consecration of America to the heart of Jesus. On Friday, we celebrated the feast, the solemnity of the Sacred Heart. And so we hear in today's gospel St. Matthew telling us about what was going on in the heart of Jesus. And so I would like to reflect with you a little bit on the heart of Jesus and how central it is to our life, how important it is. Now, you know, when we speak of the heart of Jesus, in fact, when you speak of anyone's heart, you could mean two things at the same time. The first thing is what we call the physical heart. It is the organ that pumps the blood through the whole system of the body and keeps us alive. That is why people have always said that through the heart you get the blood, and the blood carries the life. So that's the first thing that we mean when we talk about the heart of Jesus. We're talking about that physical heart. But then also in common human speech throughout the world and in all cultures and at all times, the word heart means also a spiritual reality. It is the most interior spiritual reality of the person. That's the spiritual heart. And according to the Bible, the spiritual heart, it is the place in us, in our soul, where everything that we perceive in the outward world, where it comes together and we experience it. So ultimately, your deepest experience of the world is through the heart. The heart is the most profound organ of human experience. And so the scriptures, they say things like you feel in your heart and you think in your heart, and out of your heart you give, and also through your heart you love. You can also hate through your heart. But everything that comes out of the person ultimately comes out of the heart. That's the spiritual heart. And so, if you were to put it in contemporary terms, you could say that the spiritual heart is the central processing unit of the human person, of the soul. It is that in which everything comes together from the outside, and that from which everything flows from the inside to the world. And that's what we mean by the spiritual heart of Jesus. And it's very beautiful for us to reflect on both hearts in that sense. The physical heart of Jesus and the spiritual heart. When we talk about devotion to the heart of Jesus, we're talking first of all about our adoration of his physical heart. We adore his physical heart, just as we adore his precious blood in the chalice, and we adore his body in the host, in the sacred host. We adore every single part, every cell of Jesus in his physicality, because that physical reality, which is his body, belongs to God. It's God's body. It is the body of the eternal Son of God. That's why we adore his body and we adore his heart. So that's the first thing. But as we adore the physical heart of Jesus, we go deeper through the physical heart to come to contemplate the spiritual heart, the interior reality of Jesus. And I believe that the physical heart, the contemplation of the physical heart of Jesus, is the very best way we can enter into the spiritual heart of Jesus, which is the heart of God. So, one of the ways that I like to think about the physical heart is to think about what happened to his heart, especially in his passion. And the thing that helps me the most to, to realize what happened to his heart in the passion is it's a relic which we call the Shroud of Turin, and that is it is the burial cloth in which Jesus was buried after he was taken from the cross and put into the tomb. You know, the Shroud of Turin has been described as the most studied artifact in the history of science. And over the past 100 years, scientists of every discipline have been studying the Shroud of Turin. And the more they study it, the more they come to the conclusion that how that image of the body of Christ was imprinted on that linen cloth, it cannot be explained by science or by any human technology. There's something supernatural about the image on the shroud. And I could say many things to you about it, but one thing we can say with a lot of degree of certainty is that there's the highest degree of scientific probability that this was the cloth in which Jesus was buried, and that the image that we see on this cloth, which consists of, the outward form of his crucified body, the front and the back. Um, so it consists of, that image consists of the outward form of Jesus imprinted on the cloth, and also of his own blood that stained that cloth. And this is so when I look at that image and I come to the heart of the image, then what the scientists and the pathologists and the medical analysts have discovered, have seen, is something that we can also see with the naked eye, is that on the right side of this image, there is a wound mark. And that wound mark, when you measure it and you compare it to the Roman spear, the lance is called the lancea. When you compare it to the Roman lance, then you see that the measurements are exactly the same. And so it bears out scientifically what you read in the Gospel of St. John, that one of the soldiers took a spear and, and pierced the side of Jesus. And the Shroud of Turin shows you that wound mark on the right side of Jesus. And what the pathologists have discovered and the scientists is that around that spear mark on the Shroud of Turin, there is a stain, a very large stain. And they analyzed the stain scientifically, and they discovered that the stain consists of two elements. The one is blood that came out of the heart after death, and the other is a watery fluid that came from a sac or a cavity that surrounds the heart. And when the heart was pierced from the right side, the right auricle of the heart of Jesus was opened, and that's where the watery fluid came out. And John, in his gospel, tells us that after the soldier pierced Jesus in the heart, then blood and water flowed out. And this is, so what I'm saying is, my brothers and sisters, that when you look at the Shroud of Turin, you see the physical evidence of what the gospel tells us about the piercing of the physical heart of Jesus. What the scientists have also discovered and observed is that there was a separation of the blood and the watery fluid, just like you see in St. John's Gospel. And the blood itself is something very profound about the blood. When they analyze that blood, they see that it belongs to type AB, that it contains the XY chromosomes. So it's the blood of a male. And when they study it further, they see it contains certain chemicals. Among these chemicals is a substance called bilirubin, and that is something that remains vividly bright red after many centuries. It's a chemical that causes the blood to remain crimson red, and this is what you see on the Shroud of Turin. And when that bilirubin forms in the blood, it is the result of intense physical trauma that the person experienced, which caused the bleeding. And when you look at uh, the fluid that formed around his heart, this they also, the pathologists have observed that this happens when the body is subjected to intense physical suffering, and this fluid starts to collect around the heart. And I mention these physical details for you so that you can begin to realize that the physical heart of Jesus is the historic record of what happened to him in his passion. And when you contemplate the physical heart of Jesus pierced by the lance, yes, you adore him as the Son of God, but you also adore him as the Son of God made man, who was willing to go through these things for us. And that gets us a little bit closer to the spiritual heart of Jesus. The physical heart of Jesus, pierced by the lance, is like a window, an opening into his spiritual heart. And in his spiritual heart, we see what he was prepared to go through for our sake. You know, on a certain lighter vein, but this helps me to kind of picture the inner heart of Jesus. You know, I'm not much of a sports watcher, but I very much, I have sometimes watched footage of certain sports soccer players like Maradona or Messi or Ronaldo. When I see how they run with that ball down the field, how they dribble past all the opposition, and how they, by almost miraculous movements, they are able to get past everybody that tries to stop them until they score that goal. I think of the heart of Jesus like in a similar way, but in a much more serious way. Everybody at that time was trying to stop him from doing the Father's will, making the Father known in this world. They did everything they could to stop him. And the Shroud of Turin is a physical record of all that they did, because everything that the Gospels tell us was done to Jesus in his passion is imprinted on that shroud. And I think that Jesus took all that opposition And he was willing to do it, even as they were striking him down. He was getting up and continuing up that hill and taking everything that people were throwing at him and still going right up to the top until crucified, he could finally say, "It is accomplished." What was accomplished, my brothers and sisters? What was accomplished at that moment was what took place in his heart, in his spiritual heart, which his physical heart manifests to us. What was accomplished was obedience to the Father's will, even to the point of death, death on the cross. And what was the Father's will? Our redemption. And so when you look at the heart of Jesus, you see the whole mystery of the redemption of the human race in graphic form. And what better way, my brothers and sisters, than for us to contemplate that heart so we begin to feel, understand, realize, conceive the love of God for us. And that's what I want to leave with you today, that the heart of Jesus is of central importance. It is the literal heart of our religion. And if we want to get to the heart of what we are all about, the way is the physical heart of Jesus pierced by the soldier's lance, which is the opening through which we can see the very heart of God.